Welcome to Neuro-Oncology, the podcast, where we bring you cutting-edge science, inspiring career journeys, and real-life stories within the world of brain tumor research and care.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Society for Neuro-Oncology 30th Annual Meeting. I'm joined today by Dr. Daphne Kogan, Chair of Radiation Oncology at Mass General Brigham and Boston Children's Hospital. And Daphne is also the current president of the Society for Neuro-Oncology, and it's so exciting to be here today to talk to you a bit about your leadership in the neuro-oncology community, what your time as president was like, and some tidbits and morsels of inspiration that you can all give us about your time leading this major society. So thanks so much for joining us today, Daphne.
Evan, it's such a pleasure. It's such a pleasure to talk to you and to your listeners. It's truly an honor.
Great. So let's talk about a little bit, how did this all start? How did you first get involved with SNO?
I first got involved in SNO actually as a trainee. I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to focus on in terms of what type of cancer. I was already a radiation oncology resident. And it was those around me, both clinicians and scientists, that turned me on to not only the clinical care, but the educational mission and the research revolving around really recalcitrant brain tumors. I love children, and I love treating pediatric patients. And initially I thought I wanted to do that, and then once I had children, it was a very tall order. It was very hard for me. So initially I actually thought I wanted to do adult neuro-oncology in the radiation oncology space. And then I realized that my love for children was going to overpower all, and I turned to a focus in pediatrics. But it was my mentors and those around me who advised me, who brought me in, who supported me, who mentored me, and who, in fact, took me to the very first SNO meeting as a trainee very early on, when there were only, a few, it felt like a hundred or maybe a couple of hundred of individuals who were also welcoming of me, that I thought, this is really a community that I want to be part of, and not only a community that I want to be part of, but also a topic that I want to investigate and that I want to impact in my career.
It's such a common story because the trainees who come to this meeting often are so enamored with the society that they then become involved. So hearing your journey from coming to a meeting of a few hundred people as a trainee to now a meeting of over 3,000 people as president is really the full breadth of, I think, what the society is trying to engage our membership in.
Evan, sometimes it's just one or two people who touch you. I remember actually being asked to be a chair of one of the, or a moderator for one of the sessions, and I was asked to do it with, of course, a co-chair, and it was Ed Shah. And I was so unbelievably nervous. I was in my early 20s. I didn't know up from down, but he sat next to me, and I told him how nervous I was, and he was so comforting, and his confidence in me helped me feel a bit more confident. Confidence builds over time, and I think back at so many of my mentors and people who touched me in ways I think they probably don't even know how deeply they touched me when they listened to me being nervous, or listened to me being sad or insecure or unsure, and they were there at my side to bolster me, and that's what really defined how I would proceed along my career.
Sometimes the best mentors are kind of unrecognized, right? Because
right.
They just have a little role, but that little role builds over time when so many people touch you and support you over the large swath of a career. Yeah.
It makes me think so often about how important it is to be very present in every moment. And when somebody comes up to me and asks me for something, I always think how important it is to be very present with that person, because I know that every touch point that I had with others shaped my career and made me feel able and brave enough to jump into this career.
Yeah, and we talked about earlier in the meeting with Eric Suleiman about looking up from your phones and like really paying attention to what's going on around you, to have these informal interactions with people at the meeting and make these connections that I think these in-person meetings are so good at doing.
Exactly.
So when you first became president of the society, what was your vision for how you were going to approach your presidency and the types of initiatives you were going to work on?
So I very much leaned into the times that we were in, and I felt when my presidency began a couple of years ago, I really felt a very acute erosion of the confidence in science around me, and I saw it in the world. I even saw it in some of my family members, my friends who were asking me questions, and I wanted to make sure that in all of our missions that we address that eroding trust in science. So be it on the educational mission, how we communicated with others, how we focused on cutting edge science, how we engaged with clinical care and with allied health professionals, and how we affected or how we touched our community via patient of advocates, and also of all of our society members from very, very early, like I was a trainee when I entered, to some of our very established individuals who have been members of the society for decades, all of those. I was very focused on how all of our missions were there not only, very importantly, there to advance the well-being, the cure rates, the quality of life of all of our patients and their families, the career of all of our members and those around us, but also on the more global need to address this eroding trust in science.
Yeah, and so we need to be the purveyors of the right information to our own society, but also to the community.
That's right, and it's on us, right? When I think about my own relatives, my friends, it's hard for them to know what to read. It's hard for them to know what to believe, and they read so much that's very compelling, but honestly not fact-based. So it really is on us to not only investigate, research, conclude, be very data-driven and focused, but then listen and communicate.
So leading an organization like SNO can come with a lot of challenges, but also rewards. So can you share one moment from your presidency that really stands out in terms of something that taught you an important lesson?
Well, I'll share something that taught me a professional and a personal lesson. So I think I alluded to this before, but I originally wanted to be a pediatrician, and I had already applied for a pediatric residency, and I had actually already interviewed for a pediatric residency, and I'd never even heard of the field of radiation oncology. I was just going to be a primary care pediatrician, which would have, of course, been a wonderful career. But somebody turned me on to radiation oncology, and I was at the time doing research. And I, at the very last minute, asked my medical school if I could do a rotation in this weird thing called radiation oncology. And I loved every second of it. And then I thought, oh, maybe I'll do pediatric radiation oncology. But I had my first child during my third year of medical school. And by the time I was an intern, I was pregnant with my second child. And it was very, very hard for me to do pediatrics. And then by the time I finished my residency, I'd had my third child, and I was thinking, oh, there's no chance I will ever be able to do pediatric neuro-oncology. But over time, I think people stood by me and held my hand when things were sad and overwhelming. And I eventually came full circle and decided I really, really did want to devote my career and my life to pediatric malignancies, and particularly pediatric brain tumors. So the launch of the Journal of Neuro-Oncology, the pediatric journal, was really a culmination of work that was started by others. It was really, I think, of the vision of Dr. Tracy Batchelor, who had thought of it originally. And when I came into my presidency, hearing about it, I leaned into it super hard and engaged so many members of the wonderful, wonderful pediatric neuro-oncology community. And getting it over the finish line was just absolutely mind-blowingly satisfying and fulfilling. And I think on a personal level, it taught me to just be patient with myself. And the fact that it was so hard for me to treat children as a trainee, I think I had to acknowledge and listen to myself, but then also lean on others who said, no, maybe you can do it. Maybe it is a way that you can be impactful in your career. So on a personal level, it was a very important lesson to me. And then on a professional level, the ability to bring people together to all row in the same direction, bringing people dedicated to pediatric neuro-oncology from all over the world and bring them to the forefront around this pediatric neuro-oncology journal was an extraordinarily fulfilling lesson and experience.
I think it's a great lesson for the trainees because, first of all, sometimes our personal lives affect what we go into, and that can change over time, like having children when you're contemplating going into pediatrics. But also, it's really humbling to hear your story about how this all came full circle for you in terms of getting back into the pediatrics world, also contributing now to the 4th journal in the neuro-oncology family of journals. And, I think that will help researchers and clinicians get their work out there and publicize it in a way that there wasn't always space for that before.
Exactly. And before of course, we published our work, but it might have been in a pediatric-specific journal that is wonderful, but caters to an entire pediatric cancer population, not necessarily to just neuro-oncology. So having something so focused on pediatric neuro-oncology was extraordinarily important to us.
So I'm curious, a lot of us talk about how we might bring our own leadership skills from our day-to-day into societies like this one, and obviously that informs the way that you approach your vision and how you lead this major society. But how did your skills and leadership within the society change the way that you run your department or interact with people at Mass General Brigham and Boston Children's?
The society is so unique because it brings together so many role groups, but also so many geographies, so many areas of expertise. And if one comes in thinking they kind of know the lay of the land, then one is going to be very surprised and humbled quickly. And I think coming in and understanding that there are so many stakeholders with such deep understanding of the needs of their communities and their patients and their trainees, be it from the various continents, from the various role groups, from the various subject matter experts, from be it radiology or pathology or radiation oncology or pediatrics, adults, neurosurgery, neurology, and then it might be our APPs, it might be our social workers, it might be our allied health, it might be our patient advocates, it might be the physicians, it might be those in academic medicine, it might be those in community practice. So there are so many different members and stakeholders with such different visibility into our organization and the importance of listening, not listening just informally, but listening formally. Having sessions in which all I do is listen, soliciting ideas, formally soliciting ideas from our membership, I think has shaped so much of the wonderful things that we've been able to do. And it's really taught me that even, well, in my personal life, listening is very important. And also, of course, in my professional life at Mass General Brigham, at Boston Children's, and in the larger Harvard ecosystem, that there are so many devoted, dedicated, committed, kind, caring, brilliant stakeholders, and it behooves me to listen to every single one of them and what they bring to the table, their pain points, their wishes, their desires, their fears, and that's been very helpful to me.
Yeah, I think we often do a lot of talking, especially these days, and not as much listening as we need to.
Exactly.
So you've been a professional mentor for so long, right, in your department and society. Is there a particular aspect of your training or your the way that you were brought up in this field that allowed you to facilitate great mentorship and give back to trainees in this field?
I think that I would say a few things. One is that at some point I really recognized that so much of where we are is luck, and that one can work really hard, and that still life is very hard, and that there are so many bumps in the road and so much suffering and so much change that we don't anticipate. And that's something I've experienced personally. That's something that I've seen my loved ones and my colleagues and my friends go through. And that's been a very humbling experience for me. So approaching every person that I meet, not just with humility, but with curiosity, never, ever feeling ill, even if I'm irritated by something, never feeling ill about their intention, but rather approaching their intention with curiosity. I don't know what's inside their heart and their mind, so I should ask, because they probably are bringing goodness and kindness and goodwill to it, and I should be open to that. And that just understanding that life is really hard, and we are here to help others along a very challenging path. And even if it's not hard when we're in our 20s, it might be hard when we're in our 30s, or it might be hard when we're in our 40s. So just being attuned and bringing kindness and warmth and deep caring has been something that people have brought to my life, and something that I hope to bring to others' lives.
So you're about to complete your presidency of SNO, and Dr. Galanos will be taking over for you. So if there's one piece of advice that you could offer the next SNO president in terms of what you found most impactful or most useful or most humbling, what would you offer to Dr. Galanos when she takes over?
Dr. Galanos and I ran into each other in the street yesterday, and we were walking together, and I said to her something like, it's such an honor to hand the baton to you, not only because you are brilliant and have impacted the field so much, but also I feel like we share so many of our values, our life's values, what drives us. So it just feels like I'm handing off the baton to an individual, and Dr. Galanos, but also the group of administrative staff that are driven by kindness and caring and integrity, by fostering trust. And my advice to her was to continue to be true to herself and to listen carefully and with an open heart and an open mind. And of course, she doesn't need my advice because she already does that in spades. And in fact, she's my inspiration for all of that.
That's great. Great advice. Very humbling, and it's nice to hear that the theme of listening will carry through to future presidents. And maybe that's your legacy, is that you're the listening president who made these changes by engaging the stakeholders just by hearing their thoughts and kind of what they wanted the society to do for them.
Well, you're very kind to say that. I will say that we're all here because we're volunteers who want to do good and want to do right. And honestly, Evan, the fact that I'm sitting here next to you, you could be on the beach too, right? Drinking a Mai Tai. But you're here devoting yourself to the society, to patients, to the members, to our community. So you're an inspiration to us as well, Evan.
Oh, thanks, Daphne. That means a lot coming from you for sure. Well, thank you so much for giving us your thoughts, your tidbits about your time as president. Thank you so much for everything you've done for the organization. Obviously, the journal that you mentioned, but the fact that we're at this meeting with 60 countries represented and 3,000 people is a testament to the long legacy of wonderful presidents. And for those listening, We hope you enjoyed this meeting. We hope you were really engaged, and we'll soon be interviewing Dr. Galanis about her vision for what's to come for the Society for Neuro-Oncology, so stay tuned for that.
Thank you so much, Evan.
Okay,
Pleasure.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Neuro-Oncology, the podcast. The views and opinions of the participants in this podcast do not necessarily reflect those of the Neuro-Oncology family of journals or their affiliated societies. And finally, until next time, thanks for listening.